This week on Supercars Talk, Waters and Kostecki lead the way on the Gold Coast. The big news this week is that Brodie Kostecki was the winning bidder at a charity auction for a hot lap next to Will Brown. $3,500 he's paying for the privilege to have a hot lap next to Will Brown. The thing I probably found most interesting was, I might put it up there, the photo of him with the winning bid, who was sat next to him at the table. I thought they weren't friends anymore. Interesting little things like that. Anyway, the actual big news this week is that Frosty has officially announced his retirement from full-time driving. So definitely he won't be driving full-time in the main game next year. He will be a co-driver only. So where does he end up for co-driving duties? Obviously, basically every team, maybe Triple Eight, but every other team, I think, probably should have put their hand up and said, hey, Frosty, are you available? How much are you going to cost next year? Because I think he's probably, he could fit in anywhere and would probably be an improvement somewhere at each team. I'm a little bit surprised still that Team 18 didn't have succession plan kind of thing for him and say, hey, we're not going to offer you a contract full-time next year, but we want you as part of the team moving forward. And here's a co-driver contract for multiple years. But obviously they didn't, so that's probably the only team that we won't see him at next year. The other little bit of news before we get onto the racing for the weekend was that both Erebus cars had a new look for the weekend. Jack LeBrock had 11 workwear with a mellow yellow Days of Thunder inspired livery on the car. It was kind of cool, but just didn't quite hit the spot. And Kostecki had Hope Energy on his Camaro. I thought that looked pretty cool. Probably not quite as cool as the Chico roll car, but I think they did a better job on that one than on the LeBrock car. Now, for the quick talking points over the weekend, curb strikes. After there was 11 billion curb strikes in practice 1 on Friday, they fixed it and turned off some of the sensors, and it seemed to work pretty well over the weekend of racing, unless you're Ryan Wood. Championship changing. So at least next year, at this time of year, when something big happens, it will actually be championship changing with the knockout kind of system that we're going to have with the finals system. Will Brown qualifying 11th. Granted, he crashed into the wall, but he was still 11th on the grid for that race. Is not going to destroy his championship this year, no matter how much Scaife and Crompton try and talk it up. It's not really championship changing. It's just a few points going either way on it. Tyre positioning in the pits. Tickford, WAU and DJR all felt foul of this because of positioning the tyres in the wrong spot for the pit stops. The footage that they actually showed of, I think it was a Tickford pit stop on Sunday morning in the telecast of what they were doing wrong, it actually looked like the car had overshot its position where the tyres had laid, and it looked like it was actually made them take a longer pit stop than what needed to by positioning them in the wrong place. It didn't look like it was trying to hamper any other teams. I could be wrong because they only showed the footage of, the one isolated incident. It does show, though, Groves were the ones who put in the protest to try and get some points off those guys because they're all kind of battling in the championship, which at one point it did actually put them above DJR because of the switch around in the points, which then obviously with their results over the weekend, they were fine with that in the end. Fuel rigs. If there's no minimum fuel drop, do we really care which fuel rig is used? Granted, in the minimum fuel drop races, yes, we do need to have their own rigs, but do we really need to have separate rigs if there's no minimum fuel drop? Good question there. And boring racing all weekend. Where were all the crashes? Bathurst was boring because, there wasn't any crashes. There was only one safety car. Well, there's only one safety car over the weekend, so obviously this racing was boring as well. I jest, of course. As is customary around here, I'll run through the teams in reverse championship order. So kicking it off, we have Blanchard Racing. James Courtney made the shootout on Saturday. Wow. Faded in the race. His qualifying was pretty good on Sunday as well, but he got tangled up in that first lap incident where, okay, it looked like he was pushing Di Pasquale into the wall, but I think he was probably getting a bit of a shove from Dave Reynolds behind as well, and then Dave was probably being shoved by someone else. So that really ended his race. He got pretty banged up in that. Wasn't bad as Di Pasquale, but he was pretty banged up, and of course, no results really for them over the weekend. The only notes I have on Aaron Love is that he went a bit too hard into the pits on Sunday, locking it up, gave the wall a bit of a scrape on the way in and got himself a drive-through, I think it was, for speeding in the pit lane. So at least he didn't damage the car too much. Brad Jones Racing. Okay, the B team. They were there. They didn't seem to do too much damage to the cars, and even on the Sunday, both of them were in. Actually, I think 3 of the 4 cars were involved in that the first lap incident, and not too much damage to them, so probably a good weekend. The A team is up next, if you can call them an A team at the moment. Jaime. If he could qualify better, would his race results be a hell of a lot better? Because, they just, and it seems to be a common theme with all of the BJR cars, they have reasonable race running pace, but they just can't switch up for qualifying like a lot of the other cars can. So they're starting further back and having to race forward. Jaime did actually race forward both races, got himself into the top 10 in both races, got himself back into the top 10 of the championship. Granted, it's only in 10th place, but it does. If he qualified even 3-4 spots better, would he be kind of looking at, finishing 4th, 5th, like just off the podium and things like that, rather than just kind of scraping himself into the top 10. Forward ended up kind of the slowest of the 4 BJR cars over the weekend. Not helped on Sunday with a really long pit stop because of a door latch issue there. You bleed, with it being so close, you bleed even 5-10 seconds in the pits now and it's all over. Team 18, the man with the new car, Dave Reynolds, was in the top 10 both days, and Frosty was just outside the top 10, but hardly saw anything of either of them during the telecast, so you hardly knew that they were there. They were just kind of driving around quietly, I suppose, not really getting himself into too many incidents. Other than Dave, he was probably pushing Courtney into Di Pasquale on that first lap incident on the Sunday. He was probably lucky to get out of that without really any damage, considering he's probably one of the main ones with the cause of that accident. PremiAir Racing. Jimmy was looking probably around 4th or 5th on Saturday, and then cross-threaded wheel nuts put paid to that. He also had a cool suit failure and a radio failure during that race. Sunday, there was more pit issues. 3 wheels on the wagon. They dropped him and he couldn't go because he had a disc brake on the ground. They got a fine for that as well. Not a great weekend. Lots and lots and lots of pace, but nothing to show for it. Tim Slade was there. Matt Stone Racing. The highlight of the weekend for these guys, Percat set the new Gen 3 lap record around the track in Sunday's race with the front of the car fully gaffer taped up. Hill's highlight, I suppose, was reversing backwards down the track rather than trying to do the flick spin in front of all the traffic oncoming, which very smart move that. Just reverse back down to the, and he was probably quite lucky that he didn't do more damage when he spun at the first chicane, then reversed down to the hairpin and, put it in first and off you go. No worries, because you see the guys flick spin in front of traffic and, all kinds of hell breaks loose after that. Just a really missed opportunity this weekend. It sees them drop down from 5th to 7th in the team's standings. Erebus. Brodie showed that Bathurst wasn't just a flash in the pan. Reasonable on Saturday. Granted, curb strike during the top 10 shootout, so he was 10th, but he raced forward to 5th. And then Sunday, pole position, drove away. Very simple race, I suppose. Just a really, really good drive. Of course, the Triple Eight guys behind, they were close all the time, a bit like Bathurst, but he seemed to be under control. It was 2023, Brodie and Erebus back together. It is a little bit sad that it's kind of ending, but will he then lift DJR up like he's doing with Erebus at the moment? Jack had a nightmare on Saturday, got tangled with Frosty on lap 1. No replay of that, so we only have their word for it. Pitting for repairs, just ended up losing a few laps, drove around at the back of the field. Sunday saw him third in the shootout, just behind Brodie. All was looking good. He did drop back a little bit in the race and then actually got a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release in the pits. Didn't see that, but that dropped him from 6th to 8th in the final standings. Not too bad after you consider how bad Saturday was, but he still seems to be a long way off what Brodie's doing with that car, and then you do wonder where they're going to kind of end up falling next year when you've got, Jack LeBrock and the rookie in the car. Dick Johnson Racing. This is where I think the points system is dumb. And 11th and DNF sees Anton drop behind Will in the championship when he finished 19th and 20th. So these guys have been pretty level pegging for quite a while. Anton had, after Bathurst, just got himself ahead of Will in the championship. And somehow 19th and 20th over the weekend is better than an 11th in the points. Anyway, no one should be excited over the weekend. I did hear Ryan Story make comments about if we're not winning, we're expletives, and Brodie's coming in next year. I can see him lifting this team to another level, but then also, why wouldn't you have just signed Kai? Davison's gone totally missing since he's been confirmed as the teammate next year. You could have taken a punt on Kai because, you're middle of the road, unfortunately, with Davison and Anton now. Grove Racing, a really solid weekend of racing and protesting has seen them jump 2 spots to 4th in the team's championship. Provisional pole on both days, one for Richie, one for Matt. Really, really impressive. Granted, they didn't convert it in the shootouts, but it showed that they have a lot of pace still on the street circuits and probably good heading into Adelaide, which is another street circuit. Both of them in the top 10 shootout both days. Pretty good. Richie seemed to go a little bit backwards in the races, whereas Matt seemed to have a lot of pace to move forward. But move of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Richie for passing Anton on lap 1 Sunday, and then he was out of the way, missed all of that kerfuffle. He could have been right in the middle of that. Granted, he kind of was on the opening end of causing it because of starting that pass. But he got himself and off he went and wasn't involved in it at all. Walkinshaw and Andretti United. I'm not sure with what disappointment to start with. Let's go with the rookie who forgot where the track was, and I don't think anyone else got penalties for jumping curbs or whatever during the race. There was a lot of speed. He was passing a lot of people, but was it because he was shortcutting the track? First 5-second penalty, 10-second penalty, drive-through penalty. It just seemed like that. I'm trying to think of her name. the meme where you can have a car, you can have a penalty, you can have a penalty, you can have a penalty. It was just, lots and lots of penalties for Ryan. At least there was lots of speed and he was able to pass people during the race. Chaz. Yeah, okay. Super fast all weekend. He was the only guy who could have challenged Cam on Saturday. Cam was in another league, but so was Chaz. And then, gear position sensor problem. You know, these things happen. It's not really team fault or anything like that. But yeah, it basically meant he had to drive down the pit lane at 20 kilometres an hour because the computer didn't know what it was doing. I'm sure there's something in the rules that says you have to have the pit lane limiter engaged as driving down pit lane. You can't just, drive along at 30 Ks or whatever with it in first gear, quarter throttle kind of thing. You have to have the pit lane limiter engaged. I am sure under circumstances like this that, especially after the first stop, that they could have gone to the stewards and said, hey, this is the issue we're having. Can he, cruise along the pit lane trying to keep at the speed himself? If he goes over, give us a penalty. But, let us try and do it. And I'm sure under a situation like that, stewards, that's okay, go for it. But it is what it is. Just disappointing because he could have actually challenged Cam and we could have had a race on our hands and it wouldn't have been such a boring race because, boring races and stuff. Sunday, he was doing so well again, and then he was in that. Didn't have Brodie pace, but he was in that battle. Potential podium there. They tried to fill him up using Wood's fuel rig, which unfortunately they'd opened up the dead man lever thing, the lever that lets him flow. They'd opened it up on his rig and not on Wood's. So when he pitted, didn't even get any fuel in. So obviously had to come back in to fill up the car. Plus they got a $2,500 fine for their troubles. He raced back through the field, but once again, shouldn't have had to. He's now out of the championship fight, and Tickford have kind of taken that second position in the team's championship off them as well. They probably don't really have to worry about the Groves behind, but it's third is third now. Tickford Racing, finally, the 2-car model is working. Just a really solid weekend from them. There wasn't really any mistakes. While others around were making a heap of mistakes, they didn't seem to. The only car on Saturday was anywhere near Cam was Chaz Mostert, as I said before. When Randall was getting closer to him, they said, hey, don't hold Randall up, and Cam just, found that extra gear and off he went. Well-deserved 1-2 for these guys. They've been working hard at it. Great to see Randall up there as well. Then on Sunday, Waters was looking like he'd probably get on the podium again. He definitely had, similar pace to the Triple Eight guys, probably not quite enough for Brodie, but he was going really well till he banged the front bar on that the tyre barrier heading through that first chicane. It seemed to take him quite a few laps to get back up to speed after doing that. Anyway. Waters now within a bit of a sniff of taking third position in the championship off Chaz as well. They've pretty much locked down second in the team's championship. A few rounds ago, neither of these things would have been a possibility, and now we're here. It's taken a while to get the 2-car model working properly, but now they're really starting to hit their strides, and could actually be a challenger next year. And finally, the team's champions, and they will be drivers' champions this year. The battle is now just between the teammates heading into Adelaide. Who says that this final system next year will not be good? Because now it's down to 2 and 1 with a big lead heading into the final round. So it's nearly done. I mean, it's not done until it's done, but it's nearly done. Brown crashed in qualifying on Saturday, lost his fastest time, but was still 11th on the grid. We heard all the championship changing stuff, which probably really wasn't... it didn't turn everything on its head like some commentators will have you believe. It wasn't a super race from Will, but he did move forward and get a good result. 7th in the end. Feeney was on the podium though, so the points gap did close down a bit. But then on Sunday, it was back to normal. Will Brown shadowed Brodie Kostecki all the way through the race. Feeney was third again, so it wasn't a big swing back in points that way. But yeah, it's really, it needs Will Brown to probably crash and not finish in the first race at Adelaide with Feeney winning for it to really open it up. He can probably do a bit of a cruise and collect at Adelaide now. But yeah, they're the team's champions already, and yeah, the driver's champion will come from Triple Eight. Pretty successful year all round, really. So that's my Gold Coast review. Down in the comments, what did you think of the racing over the weekend? Were you as disappointed as I was with Walkinshaw Andretti United, and probably PremiAir with Golding as well, because I would have really liked to see those guys have some solid results this weekend. It is all a bit in jest about the boring racing over the weekend. It definitely wasn't boring, but a lot of people after Bathurst, because there was only one crash and one safety car, a lot of people were saying Bathurst was boring. So yeah, really there was only one crash and one safety car this weekend. So therefore, the racing this weekend was boring too. But that's a joke. Anyway, until next time, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.